The sat phone in your hand weighs nothing. The words coming through it weigh everything. Captain, we have a problem. The Panamanian contact is dead. You're on your own. The line goes dead. Static, then silence. The kind of silence that presses against your eardrums like the 340 feet of water beneath your keel. You're standing in the wheelhouse of a 58-meter expedition yacht. Outside, the Caribbean stretches black and infinite. No moon, no stars. Just a faint phosphorescent glow of the wake behind you. Somewhere below your feet, hidden inside a custom-welded void space beneath the engine room bilge, sit 47 gold bars. Each one weighs 12.4 kilograms. Each one is stamped with a serial number that was filed off 3 days ago in a warehouse outside Cartagena. Total value, $204 million. Your AIS transponder has been dark for 6 hours. The Venezuelan Coast Guard is running interdiction patterns 40 nautical miles to your south. The U.S. Coast Guard cutter Dependable is somewhere to your north. You don't know exactly where, because you killed your radar 2 hours ago to avoid detection. And now your only contact, the man who was supposed to meet you at the coordinates, the man with the fuel barge and the armed escort and the next set of instructions, is apparently floating face down in the Panama Canal. You have 31% fuel remaining in your 45,000-liter tanks. You have no way to offload the cargo. You have no way to explain why a $28 million UML's yacht registered to a shell company in the Cayman Islands is running dark through international waters. And in approximately 4 hours, the sun will rise. The backstory and ambiguity. 6 months ago, you were legitimate. Well, mostly legitimate. You held a Master of Yachts 3000 GT license. You had 15 years of blue water experience. You crossed the Atlantic 11 times, navigated the Northwest Passage twice, and once held a 72-meter Lursen steady through a Force 10 storm off the coast of Iceland, while a Saudi prince played poker in the Sky Lounge. The industry knew your name. Charter brokers requested you specifically. Owners trusted you with vessels worth more than small nations' GDP. But the industry also knew something else. The 2019 incident. You don't talk about it. Nobody talks about it. But everyone knows. A guest on a charter in the Maldives. The owner's business partner. He'd had too much to drink. He'd gotten aggressive with a stewardess. A 22-year-old from New Zealand who'd only been in the industry for 8 months. You intervened. Physically, the guest's orbital bone fractured when he hit the deck. His lawyers called it assault. The Maritime and Coast Guard agency launched an investigation. The owner, who needed that business partner's $40 million investment, suddenly couldn't recall the guest's behavior. The charges were eventually dropped, but the Whisper network is merciless. He's a liability. Volatile, damaged goods. For 2 years, you scraped by delivery runs, seasonal work on day charters in Croatia, a humiliating stint as first mate on a 34-meter, where the owner's 26-year-old girlfriend gave you orders. Your savings bled out. Your marriage bled out faster. And then the email arrived. The man who sent it called himself Mr. Enrique. No last name. No company affiliation. The meeting was in Lisbon, in a private dining room above a restaurant that didn't appear on Google Maps. He didn't waste time. You have a reputation for discretion, Captain, and for loyalty to your crew, if not to your employers. He slid a photograph across the table. A yacht, the Aurelius, 58 meters. Custom built by UML's in 2018. Range of 5,000 nautical miles. Draft of 3.2 meters. Stabilizers at anchor and underway. She's beautiful, you said. She's yours. For one voyage. The compensation he named made your hands tremble. $2 million. Wired any account you specified, in any jurisdiction, in any currency. For a 3-week delivery from Cartagena, Colombia, to a private dock in Montenegro. You asked what the cargo was. Mr. Enrique smiled. Cultural artifacts, he said, being repatriated to their rightful owners. You knew he was lying. You took the job anyway. The technical deep dive. The modifications began immediately. The void space was the key. Every yacht has dead space. Areas between the structural frames. beneath the engine room, inside the bow thruster compartments. Spaces that exist on the original naval architecture drawings, but serve no functional purpose. The Aurelius had 14 cubic meters of void space distributed across 6 compartments. The engineers Mr. Enrique hired, men who never gave their names and communicated only in Portuguese, reinforced a large compartment with marine-grade 316L stainless steel. Weight distribution was recalculated. Trim tabs were adjusted. The vessel center of gravity shifted 12 centimeters aft. Gold is dense, absurdly dense. A single bar, 400 troy ounces, the London Good Delivery Standard, measures roughly 25 centimeters long, 8 centimeters wide, and 4.5 centimeters tall. It weighs 12.4 kilograms, 47 bars, 583 kilograms of pure gold. The vessel's original displacement was 640 metric tons. The gold added less than 0.1% to that figure. Negligible, undetectable, unless someone knew exactly where to look. The AIS transponder was the first problem. Every commercial vessel over 300 gross tons is required to broadcast its position via the automatic identification system. The signal transmits your vessel's name, call sign, MMSI number, position, course, speed, and destination. Turning off AIS is illegal under SALAS regulations. It's also the first thing authorities look for when they're hunting smugglers. But Mr. Enrique's people had a solution: a spoofed MMSI. The spoofing device broadcast a false AIS signal from a satellite uplink. Anyone tracking the Aurelius would see her making a routine passage from Aruba to Belém. Meanwhile, the real vessel, you, could run dark. The only risk was radar. Modern maritime radar operates on X-band and S-band frequencies. The Aurelius had a carbon fiber radar-absorbing superstructure, a modification that had been listed on her original build specifications as an aesthetic choice. It reduced her radar cross-section by approximately 40%. At 14 knots, running parallel to commercial shipping lanes, you look like clutter, background noise, a fishing vessel, maybe a wave return. But that only worked if you stayed far enough from patrol vessels. The route Mr. Enrique planned avoided every known patrol pattern. You'd slip through the Windward Passage at night, cross the Atlantic via the Canary Current, staying north of the Cape Verde detection zone, enter the Mediterranean through the Strait of Gibraltar at 0300 local time, when traffic was lightest, 17 days, for 1,200 nautical miles, 3 fuel stops, each one coordinated with Mr. Enrique's network. Cartagena to Martinique, Martinique to the Azores, Azores to Gibraltar. The system was elegant. The logistics were flawless. And then, 72 hours into the voyage, everything began to collapse. The first sign was the engine. The port MTU started running rough at 0200. The exhaust gas temperature climbed 15 degrees above normal. The chief engineer, a Ukrainian named Dimitri, who'd worked tankers for 20 years, diagnosed the problem in minutes. Cavitation. The propeller blades were eroding, tiny pits forming where the vapor bubbles imploded. It was happening because the vessel was running heavy, heavier than the original specifications accounted for. The gold, Dimitri said, it's throwing off the trim. You adjusted the trim tabs. You recalculated the weight distribution. But gold isn't like other cargo. It doesn't shift. It doesn't settle. It sits in one place, dense and immutable, and it changes everything. The propeller shaft was vibrating at 4.2 millimeters, twice the acceptable tolerance. If it continued, the shaft seal would fail. Seawater would flood the engine room. You had 2 choices: slow down to 8 knots, reducing the stress on the propulsion system. This would add 5 days to your crossing. Or maintain speed and pray the shaft held. You chose speed, because Mr. Enrique had made one thing very clear. The timeline was non-negotiable. The fuel barge in Martinique would only wait 12 hours. Miss that window, and you'd be stranded in the Caribbean with 31% fuel, a damaged propeller shaft, and $204 million in stolen gold. The second problem emerged at the Martinique rendezvous. The fuel barge was there, a rusty Panamanian flag vessel operated by men who didn't speak and didn't make eye contact. They pumped 38,000 liters of marine diesel into your tanks in under 2 hours. But when the transfer was complete, the barge captain handed you a sealed envelope. Inside was a photograph. The original buyer in Montenegro was dead, killed in Podgorica 3 days earlier. The delivery coordinates had changed. The new destination was Libya. You stared at the photograph for a long time. Then you looked at Dimitri. Then you looked at the fuel gauge, now reading 87%. You could turn back, surrender to the first Coast Guard cutter you found, claim ignorance, claim coercion, but you'd still be a smuggler. The gold was still in your hull. Your fingerprints were on every manifest, every fuel receipt, every forged document. And Mr. Enrique had made another thing clear. In that private dining room in Lisbon, the people who own this cargo do not accept failure. They do not accept excuses. They accept only results or consequences. You change course for Libya. The climax and fallout. The Atlantic crossing was brutal. A low-pressure system stalled over the Azores, generating 6-meter swells and sustained 40-knot winds for 9 consecutive days. The stabilizers worked overtime, the hydraulic pumps screaming as they fought to keep the vessel level. Dimitri reported that the propeller shaft vibration had increased to 5.8 millimeters. The SEAL was weeping. 2 liters of seawater per hour were entering the engine room bilge. You posted a lookout on the bow, a deckhand named Carlos who'd been hired in Cartagena and asked no questions. His job was to watch for patrol vessels. But the real threat wasn't the authorities. It was the crew. Dimitri had figured out what was in the hidden compartment. He hadn't seen the gold, but he'd seen the weight distribution calculations. He knew the numbers didn't match any legitimate cargo. On day 11, he confronted you in the wheelhouse. "How much?" he asked. You didn't answer. "The cargo," he said. "How much is it worth?" "Enough." "Enough for what? For 3 more years before the authorities find you? For a prison cell in Libya? For a bullet in a warehouse when you're no longer useful?" He wanted a cut. 20% split between himself and Carlos. Anton, the chef, was apparently not included in his calculations. You told him you'd consider it. That night, you reviewed your options. Mr. Enrique's network operated on a strict compartmentalization principle. Each link in the chain knew only the link before and after it. The fuel barge captains didn't know the destination. The destination contacts didn't know the origin. And you, the captain, knew almost nothing except the next set of coordinates. If you gave Dimitri his cut, he would become a permanent liability. A man who knew about the gold, knew about the route, knew about your involvement. A man who could leverage that knowledge for the rest of your life. If you refuse, he might sabotage the vessel, or alert the authorities, or simply kill you in your sleep and take the cargo for himself. You made a decision. At 0317 on day 12, you knocked on Dimitri's cabin door. He opened it wearing only boxer shorts, his gray chest hair matted with sweat. "I've thought about your proposal," you said, and you showed him the flare gun you'd taken from the emergency station. Dimitri was a professional. He'd survived 30 years at sea, including 2 separate vessel sinkings. He understood leverage. "You shoot me, you lose your engineer," he said. "The shaft seal fails in 2 days, maybe less." "You're right," you said, "but I can operate the manual bilge pumps. Can you remove a flare from your chest cavity?" Dimitri agreed to complete the voyage for his original fee. No bonus, no cut, but his eyes changed after that night. The Strait of Gibraltar was quiet. You passed through at 0248, running between a container ship and a tanker, lost in their radar shadows. No one hailed you. No one questioned the Cayman Islands flag snapping in the Mediterranean wind. The Libyan coast appeared at dawn on day 16. The coordinates led to an abandoned oil terminal 40 kilometers east of Tripoli. The facility had been destroyed during the 2011 revolution and never rebuilt. Concrete piers jutted into the shallow water like broken teeth. A small boat approached as you dropped anchor. The man in the bow was not Mr. Enrique. He was Libyan, or perhaps Tunisian, with a thick beard and a scar that bisected his left eyebrow. He introduced himself as the receiver, "You have the cargo?" he asked. "You have my payment?" He smiled, and then he shot Dimitri. The Ukrainian collapsed against the transom, a red stain spreading across his coveralls. He tried to speak, but only a wet gurgling emerged. "Insurance," the receiver said. "Now you have no engineer. You need us to complete this transaction." The next 3 hours were mechanical. The gold was extracted from the hidden compartment and transferred to the rigid hull boat. The receiver's men counted each bar, verified each weight, photographed each serial number void. When the last bar was aboard, the receiver handed you a satellite phone. "Call this number in 48 hours. Your payment will be confirmed." He did not explain what would happen if the payment was not confirmed. You stood there for a long time. Carlos and Anton had locked themselves in the crew quarters during the transfer. They hadn't seen the shooting. They hadn't seen the gold, but they'd heard the gunshot. You had to dispose of Dimitri's body. You had to clean the blood. You had to fabricate a story, an accidental fall, a medical emergency, anything that would explain why your engineer was missing when you arrived at your next port. You did all of these things. It took 4 hours. And then you called the number. "The cargo has been verified," Mr. Enrique said. "Your payment is being processed." Relief flooded through you, a physical sensation, like warmth spreading from your chest. "However," he continued, "there is a complication. The gold," he explained, "had been traced. The serial numbers, despite being filed off, had been logged in a recovery database maintained by Interpol. The bars had been stolen from a Venezuelan central bank vault in 2018. Someone had talked. Someone in Cartagena. Someone on the fuel barge. Someone in the chain. The Americans are involved now," Mr. Enrique said. "The Homeland Security. They've issued a maritime interdiction order. Your vessel's description has been circulated to every Coast Guard in the Mediterranean. What do? You disappear, Captain. You abandon the vessel. You become someone who doesn't exist. And my payment?" The line was already dead. The NO signal ending. The cafe has no name. It sits at the end of an alley in Sousse, Tunisia, between a mechanic shop and a building that might have been a hotel before the revolution. You come here every afternoon. The $2 million never arrived. Of course it didn't. Mr. Enrique, if that was ever his name, had vanished. The phone number was disconnected. The email addresses bounced. The Aurelius was seized by Maltese authorities 3 weeks after you abandoned her. The hidden compartment was discovered. Your fingerprints were everywhere. Interpol issued a red notice. Your face appears in databases across 6 continents. Your license has been revoked. Your passport, your real passport, is worthless. You exist now on forged documents purchased from a Tunisian fixer for $8,000. The money came from pawning your watch, an Omega Seamaster you bought to celebrate your first command 15 years ago. Carlos and Anton were arrested in Malta. They're cooperating with authorities. They provided detailed descriptions of your face, your voice, your habits. Dimitri's body was never recovered, but his family in Odessa has been asking questions. His daughter, a woman you never met, whose photograph you once saw taped to his cabin wall, has hired a private investigator. The investigator has traced Dimitri's last known location to the Libyan coast. He's asking about an abandoned oil terminal. He's asking about a 58-meter yacht that appeared in satellite imagery on the day Dimitri's phone stopped transmitting. You don't know how long you have. The Libyan fixer who gave you safe passage has stopped returning your calls. The cafe owner, who has been accepting your bribes for discretion, looked at you strangely this morning. The Mediterranean is vast. The desert is vaster. There are places a man can disappear, really disappear, if he has enough money and enough luck. You have neither. What you have is a name that means nothing, a face that's known to every law enforcement agency on the planet, and the memory of 583 kilograms of gold sliding into a Libyan boat while a man you threatened 12 hours earlier bled out on your deck. You were a captain once. You had a uniform and a license and a reputation that opened doors. Now you have a cafe with no name, a forged identity that won't survive its first real inspection, and the certain knowledge that somewhere, maybe today, maybe tomorrow, maybe 6 months from now, the past will find you. It always does. For more stories from the edge of the maritime world, explore our full playlist on the channel and follow us on Facebook for updates and behind-the-scenes content at facebook.com/yachtverse.